Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Solo Spooky Story. My name's Rob, and I'll be your host. For those of you who don't know, the Solo Spooky Stories are shorter episodes every other week presented by myself, where I'll just talk about something that I found pretty interesting, some case that I found online that, doesn't have a huge amount of information on it, and I just want to talk about it, or we've gotten something in from a listener. So, yeah, there's kind of a bit of variety. We kind of talk about everything, really, same as the main episodes, and I think the nice thing about it is that it's a one-on-one conversation with me and you, the listener, rather than a conversation that you're listening to between myself and Suze. But yeah, they're just fun. It's something a bit different, and they are shorter, which is the key thing I think that most people like about it. So I know a lot of people just don't have time to listen to full 1 hour episodes, and they just enjoy the shorter episode with a bit of spooky content in it, and that's perfectly fine. But yeah, I hope you're all keeping well. It's a nice time of the year here in Ireland. It's summertime. It's just enjoyable. It's a good time of the year. Everyone's happier, and just makes everything better. But with that said, I'll cut out the rambling now and we'll just get straight into it. So I've been on a bit of a binge recently, kind of reading kind of just like old school ghost stories, and I've been touching a bit of like Lovecraftian horror again recently. As problematic as H.P. Lovecraft is as a person, which is putting it very lightly, it's undeniable, but that the stuff that came out of the guy's mind is pretty interesting, and I find it really, really interesting. And one of those things that really has grasped me as a concept is this idea of like an abandoned town, a ghost town, these kind of mysterious towns that have no reason behind why they're abandoned and such. And there's loads of them in his stories, like Innsmouth is one of the famous ones there, and it's, super, super interesting. So that got me thinking, looking at like other real life examples of like ghost towns, abandoned towns, kind of historical examples of them. There's obviously the very famous settlement of Roanoke, which we will talk about on a full episode. I can't wait to talk about that, actually. But the cool thing about reading about everything is, you find all these other stories, and this is one I'd heard about a while ago, and it's just a really cool story. And as I've been looking around, I remembered it, so I thought today would be a cool one to talk about. It's not so much paranormal as it is just kind of just spooky, just generally, and it's more the real world reasoning behind why this town is abandoned is what makes it spooky. So today we're talking about the town of Centralia, which is a fucking brilliant name, I'll just say. Like, it sounds like something out of some paranormal podcast or some story. And this town, it has a bit of everything about it, but I suppose the spark notes about this town is that it's effectively permanently on fire. And not only is it permanently on fire, but the town, to live there's certain areas of it which is poisonous. You can't live there anymore. It's uninhabitable. The entire town is owned by the federal government, and yeah, it's allegedly the inspiration behind the video game Silent Hill. So I've seen some people try to debunk that. I've seen others adamant about it. I just think it's pretty cool. And for those of you that know Silent Hill, you'll know the kind of cursed town that's covered in this unshiftable fog, and there's like creatures hiding in it and things like that. And this allegedly is one of the examples behind it, or the inspirations, should I say. And yeah, so it's this, I suppose, normal town in Pennsylvania in the States. And yeah, so according to the 2018 census, it still has 11 residents living in it, which is a drastic drop from the over 2,000 residents that lived in it at its peak. And I think, as I said, the interesting thing about this is it's not been abandoned for a reason because of ghosts or aliens or something like that. It's for a very real reason, with a little bit of paranormal thrown into it. This wouldn't be this podcast without me giving you a little bit of taste of paranormal. So we're going to get into some history behind it first. So I saw a problematic description of this online that said that in 1749, this area was sold by Native Americans to the first white residents. That's a fairly heavy sentence. I'm gonna not delve into that too much, but you can read into that however way you want to. I don't imagine it was just sold happily. So we're just gonna go straight past that because that's not what this is about. And yeah, so as soon as the area was purchased, immediately a road was constructed in the area to kind of cement it as a town. And there's apparently a highway that was effectively built through it. It in later days became known as Route 61. So around the 1840s, kind of into the mid 19th century, coal and iron were discovered in this town. town, and this vast network of mines was built directly underneath the town. And I am talking a massive series of mines underneath the town. They go entirely underneath the town. And yeah, so the town attracted all sorts of people from all across America. So miners from everywhere came to get work here. And allegedly it attracted a certain element of criminals to it as well, because they saw an opportunity to make money here. And, you know, why not? It's effectively a Wild West sort of town, but not in the West. So they saw an opportunity and they took it. So yeah, apparently an Irish activist group, and this is actually how I heard about this town initially. So an Irish activist group called Molly Maguire, who targeted Irish American miners, decided to set up in Centralia, and they basically just caused all sorts of shenanigans in this town. And yeah, by the sounds of things, they were not the nicest. So yeah, this group, the Maguire gang, or whatever you want to call them, the Molly Maguire gang, they in 1878, so about 30 years after the mines or the resources were first discovered, they just straight up murdered the town's mayor, who was called Alexander Ray. He was, I think, just to make this worse, they actually talk about it in the newspapers at the time about how he was this feeble man who was in a wheelchair, and this Irish gang of criminals murdered him. So yeah, it's not a good look. And the law enforcement knew obviously who it was who did it, and 3 of the killers who were convicted for it, they were publicly hanged in the town. But that didn't stop the group from continuing in their ways, and I believe it actually got worse after this. They escalated it. So it was so bad that there was like gunfights in the town, there was like active shootings, people were being robbed, just basically everything you can imagine that was going on with this criminal gang. Like they were effectively running this town in a way. So as all good stories around these sort of things have, there's obviously a legend that talks about a curse. and yeah, this is no different. So the myth about this town basically goes that Centralia, at a certain point around the 1880s, attracted their first Catholic priest. And as everyone listening to this knows, Ireland is a predominantly Catholic country, and back then it was even more Catholic. And, you know, they really, you know, we love a good bit of Catholicism here in Ireland, and there was enough Irish people in this town that it attracted a Catholic priest. I should say actually as well that just in historical context, this time in America for Irish people is very tough. Irish people have fled Ireland because of the famine that's going on here. They've been immigrating in waves into America, trying to basically get a new life for themselves. And Irish people aren't looked at particularly keenly at this time in the country. So for there to be an Irish criminal gang, while not surprising, it's also, you know, there's a lot more history to it there. There's a lot more context to it that, you know, there's more problems here at play. Like it's fueling public perceptions of Irish people as well, and forcing Irish people to be viewed in a certain way as well. And again, I'm not going to get into that today, but I just, you know, just to give some context there. So this gang, the Molly Maguire gang, they pissed off basically the local Catholic priest. His name was Daniel Ignatius McDermott, and basically he was so pissed off with this gang that he was openly, publicly kind of giving them shit, and 3 of their members attacked him in some sort of retribution for whatever it was he was saying. And this riled him up so much, and understandably upset him so much, that he put a curse basically on the gang, and by extension the town of Centralia, that one day the only building left in Centralia would be the St. Ignatius Roman Catholic Church. And yeah, he basically just had enough of it. So shortly after this, the entire gang was rounded up, their leaders were all publicly hanged, and basically the battle for who owned Centralia was finally over. The law and order seemingly won out here. But according to the myth of the town, even though the leaders were hanged and such, their descendants continued to just live in Centralia anyway, because, you know, they'd been here for quite a while. Naturally, they'd have kids and family members over as well, and they just continued to live there. So, you know, kind of fueling the issues there, I suppose, or the views. So getting into 1890 then, closer to the 20th century, the town at this point actually had like over 2,700 residents, which is, you know, considering that it basically had nothing only 40 years prior, it's pretty impressive. So yeah, it had 2,700 residences. And then I also saw online, which I actually just found really interesting, it had 7 churches, 5 hotels, 27 saloons, 2 theaters, 1 bank, 1 post office, and 14 supermarkets. So a pretty bustling town when you think about it. Like, huge amount of stuff going on there. Obviously, it may not have been the highest quality of amenities, but, you know, you can't deny there's a lot going going on there. So yeah, coming into the 20th century, things were looking up for the town. And unfortunately, with the 20th century being what it was, the town was drastically affected by World War I. So most of the young men in the town ultimately went to fight in Europe in World War I. And unfortunately, a lot of them didn't return as these things went. And this was then just further made worse then by the stock market crash in 1929 leading into the Depression. So as a result of both of these events happening, the mines closed, and this basically created a new job. And it was from this that the town kind of entered into like a new life. So as the mines were shut down, they created this thing called shaft mining. I think it was known locally as pillar robbing. And basically the pillars that were in the empty mines were removed because money was given for them. So basically it was like the huge pillars that were placed down for the mine shafts, the lifts, everything like that. They were all pulled out, sold off. But as a result of this, the mines started collapsing because there was nothing to shore them up anymore. So this work, from what I can see, continued from the 30s right through to 1982. And allegedly, even to this day, there's still some people that actually work in the open mines, which I just find mad interesting. So let's get to what makes this a ghost town. So there's actually no stories that I can find online anyway of ghostly sightings of this town. Can't find anything. I assumed with its history there might be something about the Molly Maguire gang. Can't find anything. So there's nothing there that I can find anyway, and I've looked more extensively than I usually do. And yeah, there's like obviously there's a few bits and pieces on like Reddit, on the paranormal subreddit and such, but I don't really class that as verifiable ghost stories, I guess. But what makes this town a ghost town is in 1962 this massive fire erupted directly under the town of Centralia. So remember all those mines that I talked about at the start, and I emphasized how there was a vast network of mines underneath this town. I cannot emphasize enough how large this network of mines was. As those mines were collapsing due to the shaft mining that was going on, you know, naturally things collapsing, there's room for accidents to happen. And one of these accidents was a humongous fire that burst out. It just ripped through this mine, and basically it was burning quite hot and quite dangerously. So this started in 1962. So just to give you an idea of how large the mine system was in this town, and also how inaccessible it was to put out this fire, the town basically decided that even though the fire covered an area of at least 1 mile or 1600 meters, people decided to just not be worried about it until around 1979. So we're talking 17 years of a coal fire effectively burning underneath this town in these vast open cavities of space. So the mayor of the town at this point in 1979, John Coddington, and a local petrol station attendant or owner, I think business owner, were basically going about their business doing general kind of safety checks, which in the 70s obviously were very different to what we would be doing now. And one of these safety checks was to stick a thermometer into the ground to check on one of the underground fuel tanks. And to their shock and surprise, the temperature within the fuel tanks was 77.8 degrees Celsius or 165 Fahrenheit, or ridiculously hot. So the fire, surprisingly, that had been spreading for 17 years was heating up the very ground itself. And yeah, it was causing all sorts of problems. So fast forward another 2 years, the fire's still burning, by the way. So we're in 1981 now. A 12-year-old boy was outside doing what 12-year-olds do, and he fell into a 4-foot wide, 150 feet deep sinkhole in his back garden. Just disappeared into it. So obviously people started panicking. They didn't know what to do. Emergency services arrived, and thankfully the boy was saved by his 14-year-old brother. But at this point then they realized there was something wrong, because coming from the sinkhole, there was steam coming from it, because naturally literally the entire underneath of the town is on fire at this point. The steam that was coming from this specific sinkhole was emitting lethal amounts of carbon monoxide. So Centralia effectively became this just disaster waiting to happen. So basically at this point, the entire town, except for 20 people, decided to move. And these 20 people basically decided to stay because they wanted to live in the city that they'd grown up in their entire lives, and basically said, feck the fire, it's grand, we've been fine so far. So the town still to this day maintains that they don't actually know what the cause of the fire was, but there's obviously many theories And one theory is that the fire had actually been burning for 30 years prior to its discovery in 1962, and that it had actually been burning since 1932. So when you look at it in that sense, the fire at the time that the town was evacuated had been burning for 50 years, literally just burning underneath people's lives, effectively. So people have said that this town literally looks like the gates to hell, effectively. Allegedly, there's parts that you can see, like open sinkholes, where you can literally see flames just coming up out of the ground, which is just insane. So to finish it off, I've gathered up some stories of people who used to live there. Cracked did a good article on this where they talk about they've met and interviewed some people who live there. So the first one that they talk about is how basically this town is living in like perpetual hellfire, which, as I said, yeah, it's literally just constantly burning. And when you look at pictures of the town and videos, you can literally see fires burning and like smoke coming up out of the ground itself. So yeah, as I talked about, that 12-year-old boy fell down the pit. They pulled him up, and you could actually see fire coming out of the bottom of the hole, along with obviously the steam that we've since discovered is carbon monoxide, which is just mad. But they also then went on that some of the people living there talked about how you'd be out walking or driving and you'd come across a deer sticking out vertically with steam billowing out around it, out of the ground. The one guy said it looked like they were trying to crawl out. The poor deer had fallen into a sinkhole and had either starved to death or suffocated to death from the fumes. My friends would claim to see smoke coming out of its mouth like it had been burnt alive, but it was just the way the smoke came out. So yeah, like it's just insane. It's just stuff just sinking into the ground and burning all around people living there, which just leads me to think about, like, what are these kids like perceptions on life like at this point? Like, they're living in a town that's literally on fire and they're just seeing these animals and people just disappear down sinkholes. Like, it just must be mad. Yeah, it's so strange. And yeah, so another story that I saw then were people talking about, yeah, this like endless fire that's burning, but they would talk about how poison gas would basically just build up in people's basements of their houses, because obviously they go under the ground, and this just became a normal way of life. Like, poison gas would just build up in people's basements, and they just came to live with this and just know that you didn't go down in your basement after a certain point again. It's just insane. And one guy put it perfectly. He said, "We always had the smoke and my wife felt sick if she was near it, so we just stay away from it. It's bad news. Only the tourists go into the damn thing." So people are just living with this. It's literally like they've got the black lung and they're just fine. They're okay with this. It's like the world's worst smoker's cough. But yeah, the toxic gas would basically just billow out of the ground and people just learn to live with it. I can't fathom this. So then moving on, then the thing that comes out of this Cracked article in general is the emphasis that people just did not care about this danger. And they said that people are remarkably good at ignoring imminent doom. So yeah, it's basically, they talk about how it wasn't until 1984, after numerous children were sucked into sinkholes and underground tanks at the local gas station nearly exploding, that the government basically decided to sit up and go, maybe there's something wrong here. So yeah, like they just really talk about how people just basically just learned to live with it, and that was fine. Like it's cool. Everything's fine here. So yeah, it's so strange. And as I said, people still live there. Like, people live there to this day. Like, and one of the guys who was interviewed in this article, the way he summed it up was, "It's my home. That's all there is to it." Like, I get it. I do understand, like, just not wanting to leave there, but like, you're literally living in a ticking time bomb at this point. So yeah, that's kind of it. Like, the really interesting thing about it is, like, the federal government bought all the houses. They've removed the zip code from the area. They basically own the land now, so the people that are living there with the government's permission. They're effectively their landlord. And yeah, they've removed like the signs, the road signs talking about where it is. They've removed all signs away from the area, like pointing towards Centralia. They're effectively just trying to prevent people from going there, but there's this view by people who obviously still live there or used to live there that the government's trying to wipe them off the map, effectively, which to a certain extent they probably are, but it's more to do with a safety concern more than anything else. And yeah, the final point is that, you know, as this town is still being being lived in, and people are obviously aware of it. People like myself are doing podcasts about it. Tourism has kind of gone up in the area. So in 1980, the town had 1,000 residents. By 1990, there were 63, and then there was 10 in 2010, or 11. That's a number that seems to be thrown around as well. But yeah, the whole town is still on fire. Like, it is still literally burning. The fire is still there, and allegedly may still burn for another 250 years. But it has brought in a lot of tourists, and the townspeople that are still there, they complain about them walking on people's properties, into like basically just thinking that all these houses are abandoned, and then they are shocked to discover that people still live there. They apparently just throw rubbish everywhere, they leave graffiti, all that sort of stuff, but they also walk into areas that are very not safe due to like poison gas, sinkholes opening, all that sort of stuff. So this is one of those things that unfortunately I think is literally going to become a disaster. It's just a disaster waiting to happen. And yeah, that really kind of concludes it. So as I said, like, this town is so eerie and so spooky with all the smoke literally coming out of the ground that allegedly it's the inspiration for the town in Silent Hill, which I just find really interesting. But yeah, that kind of concludes where we are today. So I love this one. I think it's a really interesting story. I love the whole kind of background to it, the history in it, and I love the fact that it's a ghost town with no ghost. You know, it's pretty interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I really would. You can let us know on social media. We're on Threads and Instagram at the Spooky AF Pod. You can get us on Gmail at the spookyafpodcast@gmail.com, or you can send a comment to us on YouTube. But yeah, with that said, I hope you're having a lovely day whenever it is you listen to this, and we'll catch you in the next one.